Hello everyone, and welcome to our talk on single source product innovations. We'll talk about what's new in the Winter 8.0 release and the roadmap. My name is Kate Strashning, I'm the founder of Dedicated, and I'll be your host for today's session. With me here today, we have Yatharth Gupta, SVP of Product at SingleStore, Shirish Toda, SVP of Engineering at SingleStore, and Kanan Dr, Enterprise Architect at LiveRamp. Let's go ahead and get started with some introductions. Yatharth, let's start with you.
Thanks, Kate. As Kate mentioned, I'm Yatharth Gupta, and in my role as SVP of Products at SingleStore, I manage the product management, product marketing, docs, and design team at SingleStore. Partnering with my colleague Shirish, we drive the vision of the product and deliver against this vision. I've been at SingleStore for about 18 months and very excited to be talking to you here.
Great, awesome, great to have you here. Now let's go ahead and hear from Shirish.
Thank you, Kate and Yatharth. I'm Shirish Toda. I'm Senior Vice President of Engineering. I'm a counterpart of Yatharth. I run everything engineering at SingleStore. I have done nothing but databases all my professional life. I'm super excited to be here and talking to you, Kate.
Awesome. Well, we'll be joined by Kanan from LiveRamp later on in the talk. In this session, we're going to discuss SingleStore's evolution over the years, uncover what's new in the winter release, double-click on a few of the coolest features, hear from a customer, and talk about the roadmap ahead. Just a quick reminder that any viewers that want to join the live Q&A with product experts in the last 15 minutes of the session are encouraged to visit singlestore.com, go ahead and register in the top banner, and log into the GoToWebinar. Now, SingleStore is a cloud-native database built with speed and scale to power data-intensive applications, and I personally can't wait to hear about the product innovations today. So now the people in the audience might be wondering what actually makes SingleStore unique. And to kick things off here, Yatharth, can you walk us through a quick intro of basically what is SingleStore and what makes you unique?
Absolutely, and this is a very interesting question. The database market, as you're aware, is a crowded one. If you look at DB engines, you're going to find about 377 databases that are out there. So what makes us different? Why do we exist? Traditionally, databases were organized either as operational databases, those that can read and write to build simple applications, or look up information, or as analytical databases where you could reason on data. Right? So these were the two different kinds of databases. The operational databases, you would enter some data and it would get stored. Think about a blog. And an analytical database, you could ask it a question, right? You load data in the previous night, and then you get up in the morning and ask it a question that how many red cars were sold in the zip code 98011 in 2022. At SingleStore, we believe that this separation should not exist. All modern applications are going to be smarter. They're not just going to want to read and write data, but they're going to want to read, write, and reason on data, on the exact same data when the data is created. Let me give you an example. A lot of companies out there, a lot of our customers spend money on marketing. We at SingleStore spend money on marketing, right? And we use marketing tools to evaluate how we're spending the money and what the ROI on this money spent is. So we go ahead and buy Google keywords. We have a little tool that we buy from a company that shows us how much money we're spending and how many people are clicking on the link. Subsequently, how many people are logging into the product. Now, companies out there are spending anywhere between $10,000 to $1 million an hour. You want to get the outcomes, the ROI results in real time. I want the marketing application to be smart enough to tell me what is the efficacy of my spend in that hour, not the next day when I've already spent $1 million. That doesn't make sense. This is just one of many examples where SingleStore is bringing both applications and analytics together to be able to deliver against our vision.
Awesome, Yatharth. Thank you so much for sharing that. Especially love the example. Now, Shirish, can you give the audience a little bit of context on the SingleStore evolution and basically how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, happy to, Kate. SingleStore had a couple of phases, I would say. In the phase one, when the company was born, the idea was that we were going to build the in-memory OLTP engine. So that was the idea in its inception. We built scale and distributed HA with multiple replicas and multiple nodes, but it was all about keeping the data in memory. Of course, we had logs saved in storage, and we would checkpoint occasionally to not lose data. But the point was that we would innovate with things like skip list indexing and whatnot, so that our OLTP performance in memory was blazing fast. So we preserved that in phase one. In phase two, we kind of moved to the second level, where we moved the data from row store in memory into a column store on disk. So we built a column store engine, we built the storage format, the query capabilities, etc. And this opens us to enable queries that need to scan large data, such as aggregations, and efficiently moving us into the analytical end of the spectrum. We do this in an efficient way with an innovation called as universal storage. This is a single logical table format that brings together the operation and analytical capabilities. I mean, the format is effectively keeping the row-oriented nature in memory, as well as and then the columnar on the disk. That is sort of where we moved away from just being an in-memory OLTP into an edge tab kind of a system. So that's a phase two. Then in the phase three, we stretched ourselves further and then did the storage and compute decoupling. Now, storage and compute decoupling is a big thing in the analytics side of the world. And when people do that, they effectively do a lot of trade-offs. The trade-offs are typically, before we go into the trade-offs, the idea is effectively to move the data from the disk to an object store, and typically an S3 compliant object store. And so you now can store the data for archival reasons, for code formats, and for a given unit of compute, you can have a significantly large amount of storage. So you're decoupling it effectively. But how it is done in the industry is typically where the data needs to touch the object store in the right path, and thereby really leading to a lot of latency problems. The way we have innovated, it doesn't need to happen that way. We use disk as a write-ahead cache, and then move the data asynchronously to the object store. This architecture has a lot of benefits. In this phase three, we basically have sort of used that as a foundation to go build other components like workspaces, which, by the way, we've announced recently in 7.9 release, because we can provision replicas on the fly through that bottomless architecture. And this kind of helps us do compute decoupling along with the compute storage, right? And then you could also do DR capabilities like PITR using bottomless. So it sort of really sprung quite a lot of innovations in that phase three. Now that kind of leads us to today, where we are in a phase four, we believe, with the new capabilities for enterprise scale and real-time analytics. I know we're going to talk a lot more about it, so I'm really excited. So that's in just the evolution of this company.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. It seems like you've definitely come a long way in the past few phases. I love it. Okay, Yatharth, I know there is a lot of goodness included in this latest Winter 8.0 release that generally became available about a couple days ago, right? Can you give us a quick overview of some of the key features that were recently announced?
Absolutely, and we have a lot of exciting things coming up. But before we get into what's new, I wanted to start with our product strategy. Our product strategy essentially rests on three pillars: distributed SQL, real-time analytics, developer experience. We wrap this up in a cloud-native product with a rich partner ecosystem. So let's talk about distributed SQL, right? This pillar for us, this pillar allows us, or this pillar of our strategy allows us to build a high-performant distributed transactional system, the ability to read and write data. We add on to that real-time analytics. On the same copy of data, how can you analyze that data? How can you reason with that data in real time? The third pillar of our strategy is developer experience. We want to make sure that all of our users, every single one of them, not only have a usable experience, but a delightful experience. Our customers have choices. We want to make sure that when they use our product, it's fun for them, they get value out of it, and they feel good. And to that end, we do a couple of things here. We try to meet our developers where they are. We as a database, very opinionated about ourselves, but we as a developer platform want to meet developers where they are. We also want to offer them a rich variety of tools that enable them to do their jobs faster. We understand very clearly that customers use a database with a lot of other tools as well. This is where our partner ecosystem comes in. You want to have a BI connector? We try to build a highest performing BI connector with single store. You want to have language support? We try to build in as many common language supports as this exists. So the things that I'm going to talk about are actually building on this strategy. So let's look at what some of these new things are. In the cloud native pillar, we've gone big on enterprise readiness this time. We have OAuth. OAuth allows you not just with the single store portal, but every database user can be the same company user. So if you're using Azure Active Directory or Okta or one of these single sign-on services, you can use the same identity for the user in the database. My favorite is observability, where we've added a lot of metrics and visualizations, scaling, number of things being added in the cloud native side. In real-time analytics, we've made JSON seeking not 400%, but 400 times faster. We know that JSON data is growing very fast, and we wanted to make this investment so that our customers can get the value out of it. Distributed SQL, we've improved throughput of transactions specifically for the string type to 2-3 times. Lots of interesting things in the developer experience. One of the ones that I'd point out is the 10x faster Python client. Single store as a database is MySQL compatible, so you could use the MySQL Python client. But we saw a lot of our customers using this, so we wanted to invest here. We built our own Python client that's available to all of you for free, and it's about 10x faster than what you would get otherwise. Partner ecosystem, this is a continuous improvement for us. Like, we continue to innovate here as customer demands. So this time we've introduced a new updated Tableau connector, which is, I believe, about 2 to 3 times faster, a Cognos connector, and a few other things that we're going to talk about.
Wow, amazing. And I definitely agree with your point there on having a strong partner ecosystem. I think it's so important for ensuring customer success. I also wanted to point out, you mentioned a delightful experience versus just a usable experience. I absolutely love that you are so focused on making sure that your users are not only getting the use out of it, but they're actually delighted. I love the terminology. It's good. All right, Shirish, lots of great stuff here around powering real-time and mission-critical applications. What is your favorite new feature here?
Well, as an engineering leader, I got to love every feature, but there are a few that has a significant amount of impact here, for sure. And if I were to pick some, I'd start with the performance on JSON seeks, right? You mentioned that we got a 400x perf. This couldn't have happened without some of the cool engineering work that we have done. See, before I go into the details here, I do want to set the stage on why this is very hard. We store the data in columnar format on the disk, which means that it is compressed. And so when you're trying to seek, not just do a fast scan of the entire data, you want to do a seek of a data. It's like, you got to decompress a chunk. Typically, the chunk is in some kilobytes of data, and then you have to have a lot of important metadata so that you don't even scan multiple chunks, and let alone don't even ideally want to decompress the entire chunk. And how do you really get about that? And that's precisely what we've done here, right? Previously, we used to encode JSON in a Parquet kind of a format, right? We basically infer the schema of this JSON data and take each path of JSON. JSON is like a tree structure. You take each path and make that as a separate column. But in ATO, we've redesigned the encoding completely. We basically went back to how we do our own scalars, like integers and strings, how we encode it natively otherwise outside of JSON. And we retrofitted that kind of an algorithm to JSON as well. And that kind of opened up a lot of capabilities. First and foremost, we can now decode from the middle of a segment instead of decoding the entire thing. So previously, access to a single row within a segment required decoding the entire segment, like chunks of 4K-ish kind of size. Now, to read one row of a segment, we only need to decode that single row. Now, additionally, we added a lot of query engine capabilities to facilitate this. And by the way, this is kind of a similar kind of an algorithm. This is a similar approach that helped us gain a lot of performance on the compressed string values too. And that's the reason why we got 400x, and that got to be one of my favorites. I would also add disk filling as another interesting, important one. And this is something that you would see on high-end OLAP systems. It's super non-trivial to do it on a real-time analytics. Once again, furthering our mission to do both operations and analytics all in one place. With this feature, when a query is about to run out of memory, the query operators will switch to a spilled execution mode to save memory. Minus this, some of the queries would which is basically out of memory, right? And the high-level idea here is to partition the input into non-overlapping batches and spill them to local disk, and then process each of these partition batches separately. So you don't have to deal with the entire data set in memory, thereby reducing the pressure of memory. When you have really large queries, this matters a lot. Now, we started this project, this particular one, in 7.8, where we, in fact, had the basic spilling support for hash group bys. And now with 8.0, we're making a huge milestone here. Since we've added spilling to support all major memory consuming operators such as hash joins, window functions, order by, and improved spilling for group buys, for instance. Yeah, so those two I would say are the ones that are dear to my heart.
Oh, near and dear to your heart. I love it. Okay, so your favorite features are the fast seeking JSON and disk spilling. Yatharth, I'd love to hear what your features are.
It's my favorite release, Kate, not just a feature, but
Oh, wow.
I love
8.0, I love it.
So, the things that are near and dear to my heart are the things that delight the developers. We were talking about delightful experiences. One of the areas where we've gotten a lot of feedback and we've learned a lot from our customers is around observability, right? Customers, are users who come in and use the product hands-on. They'd love to see what's happening behind the hood. And they'd love to see this because they're able to locally optimize things, right? They're able to find and fix issues that may or may not exist in their queries. So this is one of my favorite features. And I'll give you we've done this at 3 levels. The screen that you see right now, this is the top level monitoring where you have a workspace and you can monitor a variety of things in a workspace. This helps you understand whether you want to scale up or down a workspace, maybe create a new one depending upon your need. But you're able to look and you're able to see the problem. You're also able to see the problem before it happens. You can see a couple of sliders there. Let's assume you're indexing on CPUs. It's getting to 90%, and that's the threshold where you might want to expand. And we have APIs for all of these available to expand and compress these workspaces. One level below this, next up, is a view where we talk about resource utilization. And you can do this for tables, views, procedures, variety of other things. So, you have a workspace, you have a database in there. Database has tables, it has views, it has other things. You can look at statistics for each one of them. So rather than when things go wrong, rather than saying, hey, I want to redo my workspace, you could go and find out and inspect whether there is a problem with a particular table or view. The other thing that we know that our customers ask for and we are delivering this time is historical monitoring. Oftentimes in the database world, you're going to find that an application does something that causes a problem sometimes being slowness, sometimes being errors, and then it goes away. You want to know what happened in the past. You don't want to let these problems slide away. And to that end, we've integrated with Grafana to give you historical monitoring views for a variety of things. Now, I'd like to add here that there are a bunch of defaults that we have built in. The customers are able to customize a lot of this information and make it their own. And this is a continuous cycle for us. We're going to continue to learn from our customers, find out the issues that are common across our customers, and solve those issues, solve those observability problems for them, making their lives easier so that they get to focus on the application that they're building. But again, given the demand of this feature and the number of customers who ask us for this, that's what makes this my favorite.
Okay, very interesting. You always hear companies innovating and focusing in on real time. Everything is real time. But I think we forget that sometimes it is important to go back into that historical view and actually uncover what some of those historical problems were. So I also love this feature. Thank you. Now, Shirish, at the end of the day, what matters most here is the developer experience, right? We want to make sure they're all delighted. And we want to make sure that developers can easily use the platform to build modern applications. So I really bet that our developer friends who are sitting in the audience right now would love to learn more on what are some of the new features around programmability and developer experience that you've launched recently.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that at the end of the day, what matters is really how easy it is and how delightful is the experience when you're using a product, right? And I want to touch upon a few things that we've done here. This is really a big release for a developer experience. We have many of them. I'll touch a few. The number one is our recursive CTEs, RCTEs. CTEs without the recursion. It's a feature of SQL that allows for the definition of a temporary result set within a query. So it helps simplify and maintain complex logic. And then recursive CTEs are a significant evolution, wherein the CTE can recursively invoke itself, right? Without this, querying hierarchical data, like for instance, the show in the finding all employees under a manager, multiple levels down, for example. You could write it. It's just complex and cumbersome. So you need, if you bring in the power of recursion to CTEs, it makes it far more efficient. It kind of really simplifies a huge amount of logic into something simple, manageable, easy to read and whatnot, right? Without losing any performance issues necessarily. And this enables tree traversals and other graph operations in single store Previously, people need to write the logic in applications or store procedures, right? So awesome simplification of code, and that's the beauty of recursive CDEs. Yeah. The next thing that I would talk about is WASM. WASM, WebAssembly languages. It's designed to create a portable format to run the client-server applications on web browsers. You could do that in a bytecode with a safe stack-based execution model, and it's quite popular. It's been used in multiple places. And what we've done with 7.9 release in the previous release was that we've natively integrated WASM modules to be run inside the engine. What this means is that the developers need not have to move the data outside the engine into an application tier and run some complex logic, right? You could basically move all that complexity inside the code. So A, there is very little movement of data, and B, it's super efficient. You don't have to wait for the data processing happen in a middle tier or an application tier, etc. Major milestone in that sense. And then moreover, I think this is a big one. When you write these modules in languages like C, C++, Rust, Python, and whatnot, they can all be compiled into this bytecode and be run in single store. That opens up a massive market in terms of really doing some of these application, business logic, business heavy kind of code to be run closer and with a huge proximity to the data. And with ATO, WASM is now going to be available for both cloud and self-managed deployments. So essentially opening up this very important feature for all deployments. So it's a massive milestone for developers. So that's WASM. And then, Laravel. Laravel is another one that I should talk about here. PHP is known for its simplicity, speed, and flexibility, which pairs perfectly with single store because that's sort of who we are. And web developers use the scripting language for creating apps with dynamic content that require integration with database. And Laravel is a popular framework. It's a set of code libraries that simplifies PHP development. So one of the hurdles that developers had earlier was in connecting Laravel with single store. And basically needed a native driver, which didn't exist. So now to remove all these hurdles, Single has invested in and released a new Laravel driver. Developers can now work on Laravel, create single store DB objects without needing tedious workarounds. We talked about Python already, as Yathat mentioned earlier. Our developers had to use the MySQL version of it, which, given that we are well compatible with MySQL, it would work functionally, but we invested quite a bit in making it super fast. And the numbers speak for themselves. So we're very excited about the Python driver as well. So these are some of the spectrum is large here and really excited. This is one of the developer friendly kind of releases. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So we've got recursive CTEs, WASM everywhere, faster Python, the Laravel driver. I think our developer friends are smiling in the audience right now. What do you think? Yes. So, Yathat and Shirish, I want to first of all thank you so much for your input thus far. I think it's time for us to invite our customer rockstar up on the virtual stage here.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome, Kanan, and thanks again for joining us today. To start with, can you tell us a little bit about LiveRamp and what you do at LiveRamp?
Nice to be here, actually. So I'm Kanan. I'm the enterprise data architect working for LiveRamp. LiveRamp is a platform, and basically powered by identity and centered on privacy and integrated everywhere. So we do identity resolution, data enrichment, data collaboration, and campaign measurement. That one you were talking about earlier in the call on the campaign measurement. That's where we are using LiveRamp as a single store as well. So identity. So because we have database and relational database audience, I'll try to explain LiveRamp in a relational database form. Actually, imagine a database with a lot of bigger tables without an identity or primary key and a foreign key. That is how the current customer touchpoint data is. So that is the problem we are trying to solve, right? So LiveRamp provides that identity column for your table and a primary key, and then the foreign key column, and then provides a clean room, a linked table kind of concept where we try to link two different data with privacy and security and safety, right? And isolation as well. So that is what LiveRamp does.
That looks like, I can imagine so many use cases. I would imagine that customers like consumer product companies and several other large enterprises leverage you. What are some of the key use cases that LiveRamp is powering today?
We are center of a lot of these use cases, right? We have one of the largest graph DB. Okay, so largest identity graph, which is not only large, it is very rich identity graph. It's been built over like decades, right? So that identity graph placed in the center of all these systems connecting different use cases, and we've been with 160 connectors to different destinations, so they can use that data meaningfully and take their next action. So when we were handling this in a batch process right now, so we wanted to take it to the next level and make it more real time, right? So we were evaluating different databases and different solutions to take ourselves to the next level. Now LiveRamp believes in innovation, but at the same time we wanted to keep our DNA of safety and security and privacy first kind of DNA without compensating or without losing that. How do we take us to the next level is what our challenge was. And we were evaluating different databases. Then we decided on single store and to solve our on-prem or our on-prem database where we have storing nearly like 100 petabyte of data currently. So we thought we'll be using something like single store to solve the problem. So to start with, we started with a hackathon, right? In a small use case, we took a small use case where we tried to use a single store as a part of the hackathon, and then we started changing that process, which involved like 20 steps, which transformed into 2 steps, and basically we gained 90% faster, and cost saving around 78%. It was both database and some process improvement, which we could do because of the database, the nature of single store in a way, right? Some of the history you have been finding out about bottomless and other features, it sounded like little simple, but it's been doing a bigger changes for us, right? The bottomless DB transformed the way we use database now, right? So we were able to put the database, all the database we designed, we made it data bottomless, and the whole thing we can easily detach and attach to a different cluster and scale. This is like phenomenal. Actually, that changed the way we look at data and databases. Actually.
Thank you, Kanan. And this is, it's one of the most humbling things to hear how much impact it had for you guys. I think you mentioned to the tune of 70% cost savings, and the fact, it delights us as, the database provider that you're using all the features that we built. You heard us talk a little bit about all the things that are coming up. What excites you the most in terms of the new features that we have?
Yeah, as I said, as you were showing that phase 3 and phase 4, the both excited as we are one of the delighted customers you were talking about earlier, because that changed the way we do our work right now. It is changing our backend process really in a bigger way, right? We were working with you guys on this related futures with WASP coming to our on the self deployment is a huge deal, because we transform data on the fly, and using WASP to do some of the transformations is big deal for us actually. So right, we are going to work on that a lot. A lot of our transformations, we call them RTMs. So those transformational modules are going to be developed in WASP. We are already started that, and that is going to be a big deal for us. And disk spell actually, right? So that has been a problem for us before, and that's got resolved so quickly and so fast. Is making our life much better. And one of the biggest queries which we are joining, graph example at the previous slide, we have been joining like 48 billion records to a 46 billion record table, and those join and developing around 400 terabyte of a graph is not possible without the spill, right? Actually, we can't have that bigger memory to keep that join happen, right? And those will be even more, this whatever the 40% faster and 45% lower cost is going to even more improve with the recursive CTEs. So with the recursive CTEs, these joins are going to be much more effective and faster, right? And that's going to improve that's also we are excited about it. That's going to improve our performance. Whatever the performance here will change. It will go up to 60%, I think, with that, right? So that is something we are excited about, and we are waiting to use that actually. So yeah, these are some of the things we were really excites us, and we're looking forward for that.
Now, this is very, very exciting, Kanan. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for being here today with us. Thank you for being a customer. And, we request you to always keep us honest. Let us know how we can continue to improve. Before I let you go, if you could describe Single Store in one word, what would that be?
Disruptive, right? It is really disruptive, actually. It is changing the world of database. I've been in the database world for 25 plus years now, and this is a big change. And this is going to make us do things much more efficiently and much more economically as well. I believe in economical scaling, so this helps us do our things in very, very economical way as well.
Disruptive. I mean, I don't think there is a better word that would make our product, our R&D teams much more happier. Thank you for being here with us, Kanan. And Kate, you hear us talk. Kate, what do you think? What is the one word that comes to your mind to describe Single Store?
All right. So I've been thinking about this. One word that would describe Single Store. I went between reliable and innovative, and I've landed on innovative. I think especially from hearing all of the features that have just come out, and this is version 8.0, right? So I'm sure with each new iteration, you guys are going to keep surprising and wowing your customers. So I'd go with innovative.
Disruptive and innovative. I think, I'll have a good night's sleep today. So that's certainly two things we aspire to be, and that's how you guys are describing us. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, well, thank you so much for the insights from Yatharth and Kanan. It was great to hear from Kanan from LiveRamp, especially because he seems like a very delighted customer, which I know that's your focus. Now, at this point, I would love to shift our focus of the discussion here a little bit into the future. I'd love to hear more in terms of what's coming up for you guys in the future. Can you talk to us about your roadmap?
Talking about the roadmap, always exciting. At the top of this webinar, we had shown a little strategy slide, right? Distributed SQL, cloud native, real-time analytics, developer experience wrapped up with a partner ecosystem. As we look at the future roadmap, we continue to innovate on those areas. In cloud native, we're going to continue to enhance our enterprise readiness. We're going to have fine-grained role-based access control. Think about it this way. You're part of a company, you're part of the special administrators group, and that group could map to database roles, right? We already have roles in the database, but this could map, your OAuth could map to database roles. And we're pretty excited about this because it streamlines the workflow for both small and large enterprises. OAuth and single identity have become very, very popular. Zero compute backups, we're a database. Of course, people take backups. We have, 17 different ways to do resiliency. But one of the things that we want to bring to our customers is, zero compute or hassle-free backups. When they take a backup, they shouldn't have to worry about any other operations. And we do this because we're not just an analytics database, right? We do analytics and applications. A lot of these applications have SLAs and guarantees, and we want to make sure backups don't break them. Replicate or migrate from MySQL. Today, we do, and we will continue to always partner with the industry on moving data into Single Store. But some of this functionality, we're going to build this in-house to provide an easy experience. If you want to move some simple data from MySQL, it's going to be one click away. So if you're using a different database, right, and you want to try out Single Store, we're going to make that experience as easy as possible. We're going to continue to push forward in the real-time analytics. This would be one of my favorite features in the upcoming roadmap, where we're going to accelerate the analytics for the JSON or BSON type. So today, if you look at the industry, right, there's different kinds of data. Single Store certainly is a multi-model database. We do well with time series, with geospatial, with string. We also do well with JSON data. One of the things that differentiates JSON data is it's growing at about 2.5 times the rate of regular data, right? And there is nobody out there who's spending enough time and energy in innovating or disrupting this market for analytics. You have all this data, you're going to want to ask this data questions, right? I'll go back to my example. How many red cards were sold in 2022 in the zip code 98011? You want to ask JSON data this question, and we're going to make it very fast. there are some internal results that are extremely promising relative to what's available out in the market today. So that's certainly something that's very exciting. Materialized views, several of our customers who are analytics heavy customers ask us for this, and they've been asking us for this. So we aim to deliver this in the upcoming milestone.
I'd take it from here and to talk a little bit about the next set of things here. In distributed SQL side, for instance, we are doing CDC out, and this is a feature that will enable a lot of event-driven architectures. Very excited that that's part of our roadmap. Cloud DR, we are about high availability and resiliency. So we are now extending our AZ resiliency that we already have to be resilient across regions, basically across the cloud regions here. That will give much higher HA capabilities, for instance. Column group indexes is another significant innovation that's in the pipeline that will give us quite a lot of performance on the operational side of world. When you're trying to seek, as you've seen, we've done quite a lot in ATO with JSON and compressed strings. We're going to push the bounds on this to provide more operational OLTP kind of performance with a better price to perf ratio effectively. And then developer experience, we are bringing native notebook integration. This is going to open up a lot of ad hoc exploration and quite a lot of frameworks that will enable you to write Python magics, SQL magics, etc. natively inside single store. That's very exciting. Node.js is another one that we are investing in to enable more web applications and seamless operational side of applications. A partner ecosystem is always important. Entity frameworks really help the developers build better abstractions. We're going to invest in .NET EF object relational mappings. Informatica connector is coming soon. So there's quite a lot here, in terms of our roadmap that's coming through here. And please stay tuned on those.
Yes, I was just going to say, this is quite an impressive roadmap that you guys have planned out. And it looks like you have many features that will please customers from small to large sizes. So I absolutely love it. My next question for you both is, how excited are you about the future? And can you share what's the vision?
So I have two things. When you think about SingleStore, the whole thing, if I were to put it in a sentence, is all about real-time distributed SQL. And there are two different adjectives here. There's a real-time aspect and there's a distributed SQL aspect. We of course think that they all needed to be together, and that's the reason why we put it in one place. In terms of the future, we believe that real-time is going to play a much bigger role. The idea there is that the operational and analytical workloads need to be all in one place. As Yatharth mentioned at the beginning of the talk here, we want to read, write, and reason all on the same data. In the beginning of 2000s, so even going backwards, for instance, the reason why these systems were different was because the capabilities were different. We didn't have roughly three big themes. A, cloud, which enabled the elasticity in the storage and cloud, storage and compute decoupling, etc., and many other innovations, right? And B, the killer apps. When the smartphones have come up, all these SaaS applications, there is an enormous pressure on all these applications to go real time. There is no dearth of those killer apps, and in fact, every application these days need to be real time. So that has happened. Number three, obviously, the innovations in the database community, be it hardware, be it algorithmic, like vectorized execution, seeking on compressed data. Those are a few examples, and that we touched upon earlier. So there's a trifecta of these forces that really is going to make real time happen, both economically as well as technically viable. And that's something that you cannot escape. We are at the forefront of that, and we're going to push through that. So that's real time. And the distributed side of things, this is marriage between relational and non-relational in some sense, right? In the early 2000s, the data was growing immensely. And so most of the folks who were working on the databases figured that we got to trade off. And what did they trade off? They traded off asset capabilities for scale. And it's roughly speaking, that's the birth of NoSQL momentum. And it's a great thing to have. It definitely created quite a lot of innovation. But again, back to the trifecta that I said, there's a huge amount of innovation that has happened ever since that effectively makes the customers demand both the good side of both things. I want the scale of NoSQL while preserving the asset of relational. Why can't I have both, right? And that will again converge the relational non-relational. So there you go. That's really how the distributed SQL is going to happen. And SingleStore believes in both of these things. And so when we put these things together, we are converging, and you see that the vision of the product, the release cadence, and everything that we are doing is in alignment with that. And that's what really excites us the most here.
When you take this vision, what excites me the most is I'm curious to see what customers do with this, right? Like this vision opens up new opportunities, new possibilities, right? And again, the excitement is about what are customers going to enable for themselves, for their downstream customers. Does this mean that I'll be able to find a COVID vaccine in real time? I know back in the day that was kind of hard to do, right? What other things are going to be true in the future because of these innovations that weren't true? And that's what keeps me going.
I love it. Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, I actually have a last question for you guys. You posed this question to myself and to Canon. And my question is, if you were to describe SingleStore in one word, what word would you use? Let's start with Shirish. You look like you're ready.
Universal. It's important for us. Again, it kind of ties into the vision that I just explained, and we've been talking about it for quite some time, and it's one of our core features as well, which I love about SingleStore. So I would say universal. Of course, there's a lot of words that come to my mind, but that's the one that I have to pick one.
Awesome. How about you, Yatharth?
Fast. I always say this internally. Fast is our DNA. For every decision that we make, we try to figure out, is it going to make things slower or faster? If it's going to make things slower for our customers, we don't do it. Because of all of the innovations, what we bring to the end customer is speed at the end of the day. So fast.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. I definitely encourage everyone to go ahead and try SingleStore DB for free. The link is actually going to be shared in the chat with you. In order to learn more, they also have some great blog posts available, as well as the SingleStore DB Playground, where you can actually go ahead and explore for yourself. Again, thank you all so much for this fantastic discussion. I'd love to open this up for questions.